Hello, and welcome to the AstroEnergy Astrology Show podcast with Astrologer Shelley Overton.
Hi, and welcome to this week's AstroEnergy Astrology Show. And my name is Shelley Overton. I'm an astrologer in Orlando, Florida. It is February 25th, 2022, and we're going to talk a little bit about the week's astrology coming up, and probably a lot of bit about Ukraine and Russia and Putin. And yeah, so let's just get into it because there's a lot. And I've had caffeine, so you can't see it. It's invisible because I guess that color does not show up. There you go. Anyway, okay, so let's just quickly go over February 25th. Well, actually, it's going to be February 26th, 7th, 8th, because we already did this week last week. And don't know how it was for you. Hope it was good. It's been a little stressful this week. I think you'll probably agree with me. We had the beginning of the week was President's Day, and then Tuesday, and then the Russian invasion Wednesday. Just, another week in astrology. But anyway, today's Friday, thankfully, but the moon is in Capricorn, which means it's probably going to continue to be a stressful weekend because the moon joins up with every Capricorn planet currently. And right now we've got Venus, Mars, and Pluto all in Capricorn. We have 23-degree Venus and Mars. They are in lockstep going around the area of the sky that is Capricorn, 4 degrees away from Pluto. Does this have anything to do with what's going on in Ukraine and Russia? Yeah, it does. And there are other aspects, though. So I wonder if you can figure out what those are. I don't know if I mentioned them last week, but, follow along. We'll see if you can pick it out. And I need to find a way to do a live because it's just so much more fun when I interact with other people doing this. So we'll look into that. So today we are also with a sextile between the moon and the sun, which is really awesome. As I've said in the past, we've got this kind of ongoing angle of aspects between Jupiter in Pisces, now the sun's in Pisces, and they're talking to, well, also Neptune at 23 degrees, which is today in exact sextile to Venus and Mars. So, what that tells me is that how men and women take action and what their desires are. First off, Venus and Mars together means your desires are in lockstep link with the action you're taking. And so overall, because Capricorn is an energy that rules hierarchies and governments and systems, that energy is really working together in the greater collective. And then Neptune at 22 degrees, we've got, the energy of water and intuition, flow, receptivity, the collective awareness. And so again, I posted on my Instagram feed, and I've had a little bit of feedback saying that people can't necessarily find my podcast. My podcast, and of course, if you're listening to this, you found my podcast. But if you know people who are looking and can't find it, go to angeliczodiac.com. All the feed links are there for SoundCloud, iTunes. I've got player.fm. I've got everything. You can find it all there. I've always got it. There's a player there. You can listen to it there. Spread the word, tell other people. But what I did today was post on Instagram 4 different, posts about the Ukraine. And basically the water energy that we're seeing with Sun, Jupiter, Neptune is there's going to be a big water aspect to what's going on in Ukraine. So look for that. And I'm probably going to touch on this again in a minute after I get past the week. And I know I'm talking pretty fast, and I can tell you if you slow this down by, I think the next one on YouTube is 75%, it goes slower and you can catch things. So I do that. I play with the speed of the videos I watch because sometimes they're just going so slow and I don't have time to watch it at regular speed. So definitely play with the speed that you listen so that you can either, hear it at normal speed or slow it down if you got to catch other things. So yeah, today, Friday, which, if I'm lucky, I'll get this up tonight and it'll still be relevant for today. But we've got that energy coming in. And honestly, I find it really good energy because I've got a ton of water and a ton of earth in my chart. So if your chart is water and earth heavy, so Virgo, Capricorn, Taurus, or Scorpio, Pisces, Cancer, any of those signs, definitely you're going to feel a certain sense of ownership over where you're feeling your emotions are, where your drive and direction is, and how you manifest things. It's coming together right now for you. For me, I felt that it's been kind of disconnected for a while. We've had some aspects going on in the chart and in the sky that were more fire and air focused. But right now, because of the Pisces and the Capricorn, we've got earth and water, and that makes it a little bit more familiar and easy to move through your chart if you're earth or water. We've got moon entering Capricorn, like I said. So over the course of the next 2.5 days, it will be joining up with Venus, which means focus on the security sense. And that's going to definitely affect America because we have so much Cancer in our chart. As Americans, we were a Cancer born. I was going to say we were born a Cancer country in July. And so the moon is opposing our sun right now, which will be really interesting because that also connects to the idea of opposition with what's going on in Ukraine. Of course, I think a lot about reality, and I put that in quotes, reality, meaning what is it that we feel is consistent in the world, day to day, year to year, decade to decade? Like, is this something that we feel never changes? What we consider normal is something that as a generation or as a collective group going through time and space, we have deemed this to be normal. Having, a day-to-day existence where we go to a job and, all that. And we know that this is kind of the formula that life takes. We are born, we go to grade school and middle school and high school, we graduate, go to college, we get a job, we work X amount of years in the job, we have families, we grow our children, and then we retire, and then the end of life comes. And that's kind of the structure of our lives. That's normal. But as we go through time, I was reading today about the dinosaurs, and National Geographic, it popped up on my feed, my news feed, that they have discovered through science and finding out about fossils that were found in southwestern North Dakota, that the dinosaurs, when they died within 30 minutes of this meteor hitting the earth in the Yucatan Peninsula called Tanis, Tanis. And that area of the Yucatan Peninsula was where this meteor hit 66 million years ago, or however long ago the dinosaurs were there. I think it said 66 million, which in and of itself, just think about that amount of time and how long a human lifespan is. The disconnect between our scope of life and reality is so enormous, it's mind-boggling. But these dinosaurs, when it hit, they discovered that the indicators within the fossils were that the end of life hit when animals were starting to find more food, forage for food, plant life was getting bigger, so they deduced that it was in spring, which is phenomenal. Think about that you can go to this mass extinction archaeological site and find out what time of year they all died. And it happened, 75% of the earth was covered with the fallout from this event. And it covered for years, and it created this kind of bubble of smoke and debris in the atmosphere that continued to affect the globe in that time frame. So to go from that, and at the time this all happened, North Dakota, I've been to North Dakota, I lived in North Dakota, it's the Badlands, it's dry, it's semi-arid climate. So you have a completely different environment from what it was in that scope back when the dinosaurs were here. It's just so fascinating to me that not only did this happen, it happened in a timeline that was so far removed from what we have today, that our idea of normal was never that. And now we know that there was a different normal for that time and space. So my point is that we tend to think of normal as something that goes on forever, but it doesn't. It is not forever. And the idea of climate change, the idea of shifting values and shifting ideologies is a never-ending cycle. We always shift ideologies. If we didn't, we wouldn't have fads, we wouldn't have trends, we wouldn't have fashion. You know, think of all the things that shift and change over time. We have generations of people that are different. You know, we have different values from our parents and from our grandparents. And, you know, over time, we awaken to new ways of looking at life. And I think we're going through that in a very concentrated way right now with what's going on in the world. So part of that is where Pluto is. In America and England, as I've said multiple times, and, you know, I've got videos, if you care to search on this on SoundCloud, where I have all my past shows, but also I have still, as far as I know, an archive of my last decade and 11 years. I've been doing this almost 12 years now. A decade, as far as I know, and some of the old shows I think are going away because they don't keep them in their databases. But over on Blog Talk Radio, where I started this podcast, I've been doing Pluto return to in America's chart for like 5 and 6 years, maybe 7 years now, because time keeps marching on. But we have this for, you know, it's been something I've been researching and bringing to the attention of the public who listen to my podcast for a good long time. So there are many shows that I've talked about what's going on with this return, and it happened this week. So look at what's going on this week. We have a new nomination for a judge. Canada has a retiring judge as of, I believe, August or September. So there will be a Supreme Court judge being replaced in Canada. We have Ukraine, Russia, you know, countless other things. We had the George Floyd decision this week. You know, we have so many things going on in this world that are very quintessentially things of this timeline, this particular moment in time. And so, yes, we do have astrological events that are happening with that particular storyline. And there are things that come back. We have a chart degree. You know, we look at a chart and we have 360 degrees of a circle in the sky around us. That is a chart. And every place in the sky can trigger different things in our day-to-day worlds. So, you know, the study of astrology is so amazing to me because at any given moment, we have this never-ending, continually changing recipe of planetary influences that will always, it's like a recipe for something you eat where you throw, you know, the taste of cinnamon, you know, the taste of sugar, you know, the taste of vanilla, and you can combine them, taking one out and putting another in. And same with, you know, garlic and oregano and tomatoes. Like, you put the pieces together and they make so many different dishes, but they are consistent in what they taste like. It's that way with the planets. They are consistent in what they bring. And yet, throughout time, tastes change. Throughout time, the shift of the planets emphasize different things in our lives. So it's just really a fascinating thing. And it's probably why I've studied it for, I started in 1976. So whatever that turns out to be, I don't know, 46 years, something like that, 45 years. It's a long time. Anyway, never-ending interest in this subject. So I'm trying to share it with you. I hope you have as much interest in it as I do, because as much as I try to move on to other things, I always end up teaching, because I really do love to teach, and I'm passionate about people learning about astrology because it is so fascinating. And I think it is an amazing tool to understand our lives and understand the world around us, and has been since I started it. That's why I still do it. Okay, Sun-Jupiter conjunction in Pisces. Yes, we're going to feel more tired, more run down. We're going to be really connected to the collective mindset. So if you've been feeling what's been going on in the world this week, as have I, you may feel overwhelmed. I mean, everyone in my family, I think, is pretty well stressed out energetically. And it's not just that. Other things are going on, just in my own environment alone. We've got the cul-de-sac that I live on. The people across the street are getting their house painted. We're getting our house painted. Things are going on where there are, they mow yards all year round here in Florida. So there's always a never-ending flow of workers this week. And the work that I've been getting, because I'm an artist, I also have other art jobs I do. I've been getting those. And so there's a lot of that kind of, I don't know, I want to say labor coming around and people coming and going. One of my cats, Ginger, is just on edge. So if you've been feeling that, give yourself some slack. It's fair. And, we just have a lot going on right now. When you look at what's going on in the sky with Pisces and the earth energy of Capricorn, we are having those things that we may have put off. And, those are kind of Piscean. You are more a procrastinator, or you allow things to come in their own time, which is very Piscean. Things come in if you allow them. And Capricorn is not so mellow with energy. They really want to control a situation. They're very driven and ambitious. And so Capricorn energy coming in says, hey, I'm going to take action on this because I feel the drive of Mars, and I feel the need to systematize and concretize what's going on. And so you have this allowance, which I've just got chills with this. You have an idea that you've maybe been harboring for a while. Now's the strike while the iron is hot moment, and pouring the concrete around the base to really make it sturdy and make the system stand. I've got so many chills with this. It is a time to connect with others and really make things the way you want them to be. The expansion of Jupiter, coupled by shining the light of the sun on that area of the sky, is going to mean that people who are Pisces, which happy birthday Pisces, are going to be in their element, but also helping the rest of us to understand how to allow, because that's what Pisces does best. It is the allowing sign of the zodiac, is the tolerant sign of the zodiac. It is the can't we all embrace and just love each other sign of the zodiac. It does represent peace. So I'm going to digress for just a second, because as a Buddhist, part of the energy that you learn to work with is to allow things to take their course. And I realized this morning while I was chanting, which is what I do, you have the energy coming out completely contrary to peace right now. And so how do we integrate the idea of peace with what's going on in the world? And part of that is, a Buddhist, is don't look externally for reinforcement of your ideas. You have to focus your intentions directed towards what you want and not what you see, because it's an internal world. It's an internal connectedness to all that is, not an external one. And we have lived for millennia in an external validating world. We are in now, after 2012, a cycle of internal validation. And the age of Aquarius, next year, March 23rd, 23, is the first day, even though, it's going to be felt upcoming in this year. The Aquarian energy is building. And that's the moment that we actually see the degree shift in the sky. But as we build towards that, we get this universal awareness, not just who we are as individuals, but who we are in the collective. So it becomes a moment in time where the collective is pushing towards an ideology of peace. And because we're pushing this energy towards something we want, we are seeing how we don't have it. And it's a very Buddhist concept. The more you push towards what you want, you get the resistance to help you determine what you truly want. So if you can think of these times as a moment when we are given the opportunity to see what we don't want, so that we can reinforce what we do want, which I think we can agree collectively is peace. Now, that's really counter to everything that in my lifetime we have come to react to situations like this in. I've heard some information on the radio today. There's an NPR story, I believe, about, I think it's on Here and Now if you want to look it up. I'm not totally positive, but NPR Here and Now, they are talking about the China, Nixon, China diplomacy going on with Kissinger and everything, and how that whole thing developed. And so the diplomacy with other countries, of course, goes through its ups and downs. And now we have it again. And, you know, it's interesting because the painters were outside the door. I'm doing an art project in the garage, and I could hear the painters discussing the Russia issue and talking about probably more in alignment with what we're doing, and we're just being diplomats. We're not really taking action. And historically, we have taken action. Historically, we do counter military endeavors. Historically, America stands up to the bullies of the world. And I definitely already see that that isn't necessarily the tack that's being taken globally, that there's definitely more of a diplomatic tack with Macron from France trying to talk with Putin, doing diplomatic meetings. But that definitely is more of an Aquarian agenda, Aquarian way of looking at things. It's interesting because I'm waiting to see what happens, but I do see, and I'm going to shift briefly over to what's going on with Russia. I probably will wrap up this podcast at the end with the rest of the week, but natural transition, we have this energy coming in that is showing us where we stand globally with our need to externalize this idea of the bully, this idea of we're better than you and we're going to stand up and fight you for what's right and what's wrong, because the contrast of right and wrong, good and bad, is somewhat of an ego-based energy. And I know it's a transition because I don't think that in the future that vibration resonates to a higher vibration. It is, and I think a lot about this. This is very ego-based, me against you, you're a threat to me. And the idea of living in one world is not that. So let's look at Russia, because when something like this happens, I look at the people involved and I look at the country involved, and I don't have America's chart up today. We're just going to focus on Putin and focus on Russia. So Russia's gone through many iterations as a country, different constitutions, different leaders. We've got the Russia Constitution of 1993, which happened December 12th, 1993, and I've got it down for 8 a.m. So that's really when it was sunrise, or very close to sunrise. I tend to like to do the sunrise charts when I do an event chart or when I don't know a specific time, because the sun is the sense of self. It is the ego. It's the ego drive. And it's what we have when we come into this world, we attach to the ego energy in our physical form. So it gives a good viewpoint of what can be happening in that particular event. So at the time, well, I just have 8 a.m. It was just a little off. So in this chart, you can see the ascendant was 9 degrees Sagittarius, but the sun was at 20. So 20 really would be probably a sunrise chart, but it's close enough for our purposes here. We have, assuming that sun is on the horizon, we have Pluto in Sag, North Node, Moon in Sag, Mercury in Sagittarius, and Venus in Sagittarius at 11 degrees. And they're all the first, actually, Pluto was 25 Scorpio, my bad, 25 degrees of Scorpio. So it's the end degrees of this energy. Pluto rules Scorpio. Pluto's in its own sign when the current iteration of Russia and the Constitution there was signed and ratified. And so end degrees of Pluto in Scorpio means that there is a collective drive to expressing this power, this personal power and personal control and personal understanding of what goes on behind the scenes. It is I do hesitate talking about these very blunt issues when I do my podcast, but I'm kind of at a break point right now, so I'm going to just talk about it. Pluto is life and death, and Pluto is also mafia. It is the hidden, it is the darker side of things, and it's so is Scorpio, because Scorpio is ruled by Pluto. So when you have Pluto in its own sign of Scorpio, it really influences you, influences the public, influences anything that happens under that degree towards more of the dark side of life, the darker kind of self-serving energy. Because remember, right now we have Pluto in that degree in Capricorn, which, by the way, is sextile to Russia's Pluto. So theoretically, it would be a very positive energy. And for Russia, depending on what their psychology is, which is Pluto, they have the power right now in this very moment. Their power is very strong because that sextile lights up the energy of Pluto, which is giving way to that darker mentality that is embedded, enmeshed in that country's chart. The moon, Sagittarius. So North Node is at 3 degrees Sag. Moon is at 4 degrees Sag. And let's see, we've got Mercury, which can also be accidents, but it can be things that are energetically difficult or not expected. Remember, Mercury is a planet that is like a lower octave of Uranus. So it's on its own, it's skittish and goes and moves. And it's in the sign of Sagittarius, which is also very active. So we have this movement and this kind of dance step to avoid the ownership. Because remember, Sagittarius doesn't want to stick around. It wants to keep moving. And that is not an indictment of any of my friends or any people I know Sagittarius. It's an intrinsic nature of that particular part of the sky that we just want to keep things moving. So the moon, the energy of how we culminate the issue, the Constitution, is in that moving about foreign energy. So this chart is stimulated by other countries, and it's in the 12th house. You know, again, if it's a sunrise chart, the 12th house, the psyche, is stimulated by activity and by kind of stirring things up, stirring the pot. That is a natural Sagittarian energy. So with so much Sagittarius in the interpersonal area of Russia, that's what they thrive on. That's the motivation, is to constantly keep people thinking and growing. So if you assign a country a purpose through a chart, as if it were an entity with a purpose, part of it is to stir the pot. The other thing I find really interesting about this chart is Saturn is at 25 Aquarius, which means, and I've got chills with this too, Saturn's in Aquarius. They're in a Saturn return as a country, and it would be their first Saturn return for the Constitution. And so they are growing up as an entity in the current iteration. And so they are moving towards that 25 degrees currently in the sky. Let's, I've got so many charts open. Let me see if I can find the current chart. There it is. It's hidden over here. Saturn is at 18 degrees of Aquarius. So within a few, let's say 7 degrees, which means over the course of this next year to year and a half, Russia is going to be growing into its personality, so to speak, into its purpose. And because it is a communist country, again, I've said in the past, I don't think it's communist as much as dictatorship. But Saturn in Aquarius is probably the quintessential energy of the collective, the community, which is assigned communism, because that's the idea behind communism. Saturn in Aquarius, of the people, about the people, the idea that we are all part of a community. But as I've said multiple times, it is the individual within the community. Now, you've got Putin as an individual who is running the country. Saturn represents the authority figure, the central figure, who in the chart of the country, it is in the second house of manifestation. And definitely when you have Aquarius energy, you're going to have the energy of not wanting to be told what to do. So it's almost as if the more Putin or more he represents the country, the more he's told that he can't do something, the more he's going to prove how he can. I've just read today also that he's potentially threatened nuclear usage, nuclear arms usage, which would be Aquarian. I know as a country, he's got Neptune, which is liquids, Uranus conjunct, well, let me see, conjunct. Can't tell if it's 19 or an extension of the glyph. Let me see. Yeah, it's 19. So Neptune's at 19 Cap and Uranus is at 20 Capricorn in the chart of the country. And so there is this authoritarian energy infused, and also Uranus in Capricorn means that I'm going to express my need for independence through the traditional system. So now if I get the system, if I can align the system with my ideal, which is Neptune, and you can't tell me what to do, but I'm going to use the system, I'm going to use tradition to manifest how I see the collective being. Uranus in 20, don't tell me what to do. I'm the authority figure, but my ideal is that we all work together as a system of hierarchy. That's what Uranus Neptune expresses through Capricorn. Mars now, the men, in the first house, it's within 4 degrees of the sun in the chart of Russia's constitution. So you've got the sun coming up on the horizon with Mars, the expression immediately after. You've got the ego and the ego expression in Sagittarius. So now, and it's in late degrees of Sagittarius. So it concentrates the energy of independence and freedom. Don't tell me what to do. I'm going to move on. Remember, Aquarius and Sagittarius, very strong similarities around independence. Like, don't tell me what to do. Physically for Sagittarius, they want to get going, and Saturn in Aquarius is idea of the mind, freedom of the body, and of action. So we've got, again, I'll just say North Node, Moon, Mercury, and Venus, as well as Sun and Mars in Sagittarius. So many interpersonal planets are all in Sagittarius when Russia became the current iteration. And then Saturn is saying, hey, we want this kind of intellectual freedom and freedom of thought and in our minds, but that doesn't seem like what they're doing. So Mercury is also a very blunt speaking force. So in their mind, from the perspective of Russia, they're telling the truth. They're calling out everybody for their own hypocrisy, because that's what Aquarius does as well. And these energies are in sextile. So really from a certain viewpoint, from the viewpoint of air and fire, they're fanning the flames of what the world is needing to see. So what do we need to see as a world? We need to see how freedom may or may not be trampled on. And then Neptune, Uranus together in this chart, very strong energy around using the old system, the Capricorn system, the structural hierarchy, the patriarchy, to prove the point. This is a really strong chart concentrated in 3 houses. We do have a Jupiter up in 6 degrees Scorpio, I think. Yeah, 6 degrees of Scorpio. So we come in with this ideology where we feel we're right. Remember, Scorpio is very black and white in its expression. It takes values and says, is this valuable or not? And it discards what's not valuable to them, and it embraces what is. And in Scorpio, and I think Putin really embraces this. And I can tell you Putin's Venus is really close to the Jupiter of the country. His Venus is 11 degrees Scorpio. And so I'm going to bring him in a little bit here too. So Putin's sun is Libra, which seems completely counter to everything that would be going on. But Libra is about balance. For him, he needs others to make himself feel balanced. So because in his chart, I've got 9:30 a.m., October 7th, 1952, in St. Petersburg, Russia, for Putin's chart. It's as good as it can be, as far as I'm concerned. It's an Astrodienst chart. And I know that they pretty much post to the best of their ability. So I'm just going to go with this. And I also subscribe to the idea that if we look at something and it's the best that we know, we can still glean a lot from a chart that's the best that we can do at the moment. And his chart is a Scorpio rising, 3 degrees off of my own, actually 2 degrees. I have a 1 degree Scorpio rising, or between 0 and 1 degree, depending on which house system you use. And he has a 3 degree Scorpio rising, Venus at 11 in the first house. My moon's at 12. So it's really interesting to see the connections here. Fortunately, I do not want to take over the world, but he does have Saturn at 17 Libra, which is 4 degrees off of his sun. So he very much connects his identity to his authority and to his life purpose. He sees himself on a mission in this world. And then his moon is at 2 degrees of Gemini, which, let's see how that works. His country's moon is exactly opposite within 2 degrees of his own natal moon. So the country moon, 4 degrees of Sag, his moon's at 2 degrees Gemini. So there's this, I'm the, almost I want to say the chosen one. I'm the balance of the country, the one who's going to come in, and it's my ideas, because my apologies to my lovely Gemini friends and listeners who are not this way, but Gemini can be probably a more narcissistic sign along with Sagittarius. They are very driven to their own viewpoint. Gemini, because it's the first air sign of the zodiac starting from Aries. And so it is the intellect, it is how I think of things, and they can see their point of view as the divinely guided one. Like, this is the way it is. This is the intellectual, analytical way of seeing it accurately. And so it is also dualistic. So they can balance both ways, and they can see it this way and see it that way. And it doesn't, from their point of view, from their perspective, because I'm not a Gemini, that's why I'm talking about them. The Gemini energy sees things both ways, and they don't make a disconnect between either way. Like, they are very much in the moment. So Putin will be in the moment with his desires, with his sense of how he looks at his drive and how he sees his expression of desire and security. He doesn't challenge it, I don't think. I think he sees it as kind of divinely guided, analytical, not necessarily from his perspective divine, but kind of that essence. And then he has Mercury right on the horizon, within 10 degrees of the sun coming up, and so, or not the sun coming up. Yeah, actually sun coming up. My bad. So he has 13 degree Libra sun and 23 degree Mercury. So that means 10 degrees after the sun came up, Mercury came up. And that would be roughly an hour. So Mercury right on the horizon, again, that strong intellectual connection. And it's in the sign of, let's just look where it is, Libra. Again, 4 planets in air right around his sun. So it's very intellectual to him. He sees himself as a very intelligent person, very intellectualizing. And he sees himself as kind of the person who's going to bring balance to everything. And then he's got some Scorpio with a Venus. So his desires are, hey, I have this value system, and I'm very ego connected to my desires. And I see things in a very grounded way. His Mars is in 26 Sagittarius. And of course, that is right on the Mars of the Russia energy. He's got it within 2 degrees of Russia. Mars is 24 Sag in Russia constitution, and he's got Mars 26 Sag. So he very much has given himself permission to act on behalf of the country, as we can see. His Chiron is at 7 degrees of Capricorn, which means, and Neptune in the country is at 9 degrees Capricorn. I want to say that there was probably an event when Pluto went across 7 degrees of Cap, his Chiron was triggered, and that probably set him off. So remember, that came around 98. And so something, well, 7 degrees, that Capricorn Pluto went in 98. Let me see, was it 98? No, it was 2007. Excuse me, 2007. We had Pluto go into Cap, and then within the next 5 years after that, we saw Pluto on his natal Chiron. So I'm guessing around, 2012. And he kind of has risen since then. I didn't look up when he took power in Russia, but it was probably around that time. That was when, hey, I'm the authority figure. I'm going to just take the power. And I remember that happening. I don't remember the exact date. So what does that mean for our world right now? What does it mean? Looking at his chart, he's got a 22-degree Pluto in Leo, definitely Pluto in Capricorn already in conjuncted his Pluto. And let's see, he's got the Libra energy. So now we're moving into the Aquarius time. So he's going to take a very strong hit, in my opinion. The trine in Aquarius, when Pluto hits Aquarius, is going to start to affect him psychologically, because that's his 12th house and it's his own ego. And he's definitely going to have conflict with how he sees himself when Pluto hits Aquarius, because I'm telling you, those trines are nothing to mess with. I know it to be true. And then when that happens, he'll have a grand trine in air, because Pluto will be early Aquarius. His moon is at 2 degrees Gemini and his sun is at 13 Libra. Grand trine in air. I want to say there's a strong possibility he will, he's already kind of off his rocker as far as Western world is concerned, but it's probably going to get even worse. And I'm really hoping we deal with this now. That being said about Putin, he's got this kind of, what is the word? Megalomaniac, I think would be probably the accurate term for it, in his chart, with this divine, he's giving himself permission to be the savior of the world on some level. And his own personal, his moon in Gemini probably gives him this sense of like, I can do what I want. Nobody's going to stop me. His Mars in Sagittarius, he will be stopped. He will be stopped. I haven't really dug deeply into this, so I've thrown a lot of stuff out there. This is all like literally on the spot, ad lib as I go along. I haven't researched this at all, and I really kind of like doing it more that way for the podcast. I know it's getting to be quite a long podcast. So what I'm going to do is 2 more things. I'm going to look at the country, the Russia energy and the world energy, and see where that hits, because Russia's 25 Aquarius, which means they're coming into their Saturn return, which is a very strong energy of you have to take ownership of your behavior and your life purpose, but you also have to see how your behavior is affecting others, especially in Aquarius. It is a collective energy. It is the world energy. Aquarius affects everybody. It's a community. So in the next year, we're going to see Russia really have to take ownership for their behavior. Pluto going into Aquarius is going to move out of that Capricorn energy. Right now, Venus and Mars just hit their Uranus as a country, and then the Saturn return, super strong. So we're going to see how Russia really has to take ownership for its purpose in this world. And, we disagree with it. They are not going about it the right way. They're going about it aggressively, which is Mars in the first house. And it's in Sagittarius, so they really don't seem to have any sense of ownership of what they're doing on a collective sense. I'm not necessarily doing, let's see what their Jupiter is in late Libra, or no, hold on a minute. Jupiter, I'm having a hard time reading this. Scorpio, excuse me, 6 degrees of Scorpio. So Pluto, the ruler of Scorpio, is going to be in Aquarius, which directly squares Jupiter in the natal chart for the Constitution of Russia. So I would foresee that a square to your Jupiter is going to definitely mean there's going to be another shift of how that country manifests itself. Jupiter is transformative in the energy of Scorpio. Pluto, major change, because Pluto is change of ideology, change of psychology. When Pluto squares Jupiter in the Constitution, there's going to be a constitutional crisis. Look at our own Pluto return with our Jupiter, our Pluto returns in Capricorn. We had Jupiter going through Aquarius. All of the signs Jupiter's been through recently, and Uranus directly squaring our Pluto in our natal constitution. major crises coming in politically. And I see that square of Pluto to Jupiter in Russia's constitution definitely going to be very big. Starting next year, it's probably going to start to be more pronounced next year. So this could drag on. Let me just see what's going on. As this whole thing, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, as this whole event blows up, that becomes a chart for the country and for the event. I do want to say, my bad, I want to say, I looked this up. When I typed in Russia, Ukraine, I think I typed in invasion, 2014 came up. And guess what? The week of February 20th and 23rd in 2014 was another Ukraine invasion. And I don't know if you remember this. I didn't remember this. Maybe jogged my memory, but it is. So Putin literally raised this whole level of alert and alarm with Ukraine the same exact week, the same exact days. February 23rd, if you go on Wikipedia, February 23rd, 2014, which is 8 years ago, and probably a Saturn cycle of 7 years, 7 to 8 years, it's coming up again. So what does that mean? Look into, does this come up every 7 years? Because that's a Saturn cycle. Saturn's 28 years divided into quarters. Every 7 years, it squares itself. We've got that again. So that's a trigger in the Russia Constitution. So right now, it's literally just a learning moment, using this as the learning avenue. And then, when we see this, we're going to see it again until we have another constitution in Russia, or Putin goes out of power, or an event happens. So I'll probably touch on this again next week. I put so much into this already. I just don't think I can continue. I'm getting a little electrically wound up with my coffee and the Aquarian energy that I talk about here. Okay, so the rest of the week, real quick, how do we look at this coming week? I'm going to go with the moons first. Aquarius moon over the weekend, and Capricorn over the weekend. So escalation of this kind of old story around authority figures and patriarchy, and really the Russian sense of well-being, and from Putin's point of view. But Monday is Aquarius, and that's the collective. There's going to be a moon squaring Uranus and Taurus, which is going to be earth and air. So that's probably a ground battle, or, air. But then we go into Pisces, and Tuesday, Mardi Gras, happy Mardi Gras. Sun, Uranus sextile in Aquarius, Taurus. That's water and earth. So I just see this coming week, next week, much more about, okay, Pisces is spirituality, the collective, the emotional connection, more sentimental emotional connection. It's going to be an emotionally difficult week. In the middle of next week, we have a new moon in Pisces, 12 degrees. Usually when I see Pisces energy coming in, especially with an escalated event that could also bring, people passing on, it's going to be difficult next week. And I do see, with all the water energy, there's so much water energy coming in next week with the new moon in Pisces. And then Thursday, we've got Mars Capricorn, Pluto Capricorn. So I see that as kind of a peak energy for this whole escalation. Mars being the aggressor in Capricorn is an older ideology of how to deal with things. That could also mean that America is escalating on our end, and other authority leadership factions coming in to show more aggression. Pluto, Capricorn, Mars, Pluto, Mars, very assertive, masculine or warrior energy. And then we have Moon, Neptune conjunct. So that's going to be women and children and water battles. Definitely more water energy, Navy, and something taking place on water for that next week. But also, I've got lots of stars. So Moon enters Aries also late next week. Again, male aggression, escalation kind of energy, but mixed with this collective, we have the moon joining up with a conjunction, to Jupiter and Neptune. We've got the sextile to the Capricorn planets on Thursday. That's going to be like a major shift of earth and water energy. It's just very powerful with the Neptune-Pluto sextile, and then other or interpersonal planets really triggering it. So in your own life, it's going to be about shifting the energy to where you find your personal authority and you create the physical manifestation. Again, anytime those planets are triggered, it's going to be making your dreams come true, but also dealing with the physicality of things and the allowance of things. So water energy, I know that we've been having some water energy here in my house with the soft water not working properly. And, just, I don't want to get into all of it, but a lot of liquids, let's just put it that way, paint and oil and water and all that is part of that energy. Earth can be earth shifts, water seeping into the earth's crust and shifting things. Then Friday is fairly mellow as far as I'm concerned, although we do have a moon Chiron and Aries conjunction Friday, and that's 3:12 p.m. Eastern in the afternoon and 12:12 p.m. Interesting that it is 12:12 Pacific. So it'll be interesting to see. I hope that's not a fire energy, but it is Aries. Aries can be fires and emergencies. So Friday of next week. And then Saturday of next week, we've got Mars entering Aquarius, Venus entering Aquarius, and then a conjunction of Venus and Mars in Aquarius. So the collective taking action. So I think because Venus and Mars are joining with Pluto this week, that much more directly connects to the Russia energy. But when it goes into Aquarius, even though they have Saturn in Aquarius, I think that's going to be a huge shift next week. And I do want to give you a heads up, in the coming months, March, April, May, we're going to have these same planets, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, hitting the degrees of COVID at the end degrees. So there is going to be another peak coming in for COVID. I know in America, we're getting mask mandates that are going to be loosened indoors. So much information in this podcast. I'm going to leave you with that. I know there are things that I haven't necessarily answered, and that's just because there's just so much to cover. Hopefully you gleaned some information from this. If you're dealing with Pisces, you're dealing with more draggy energy, more emotional, sentimental, weepy energy, body fluids, feet. I have shoes coming today. It's a Pisces energy. We're going to be going into the energy of Jupiter in Aries come May. Right now we're in long hair season, beards and long hair, that's Pisces. We're going to go into haircuts and more head. So it'll be head energy, thinking, concussions, unfortunately, could be a potential when Mars is in Aries, and cutting the hair. These are just what's to come. But by May, we're going to have the Mercury, Venus, and Mars all in late degrees Aquarius, early Pisces, which again are the COVID degrees. So there's probably going to be a peak come that time. Not going to give any predictions on how bad it's going to be, but I think this year we're going to see a couple of those humps. If you've watched the early year prediction podcast, you'll see that. I got to get off because this is going to be a monster to upload. Anyway, take care this week. Baby yourself. Utilize the earth water energy for your own comfort and security, and also get into psychic awareness because you're getting messages. And then we'll see you next week and we'll talk about it some more. Go to my angeliczodiac.com site if you're looking for links to the podcast and any of my art, which you can't see right now, but maybe I'll post a couple pieces at the end so you can see some of my latest stuff. All right, that's all. Take care. Have a great week and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Hi, this is Shelley. Thank you for joining us this week. To contact me for a private reading, go to angeliczodiac.com under the Readings tab. Background music was provided by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. To purchase my ebook, Learn Astrology, you can find it at angeliczodiac.com, including discounts. Be sure to check back next week and subscribe through iTunes at AstroEnergy Astrology Show.